Welcome back to Loyalty Leaders Podcast. I'm David Feldman, chair of Loyalty Summit. And next week in Chicago, we have Loyalty Summit Americas coming up for 2024 on September 17th and 18th. And I'm joined today by Roger Williams from Marigold. I want to introduce Marigold as our presenting sponsor this year at Loyalty Summit. We're very grateful for their support. Marigold have been longtime supporters of Loyalty Summit. And Roger should be no stranger to most of you. Certainly if you've attended one of our events in the past. Roger, long experience in the loyalty industry on kind of all sides of the table, really. Do you want to very quickly introduce yourself and also Marigold as presenting sponsor? Sort of for those who might not have heard of Marigold, what is it you do? How do you help loyalty programs? Maybe give us the introductory version.
Sure, David. It's good to be with you. Yeah. So I'm head of our Loyalty Center of Excellence at Marigold, and I started my career in as an airline loyalty manager. So really doing the work that was quite a long time ago in the 90s. And over the years, I've worked for Sabre and had my own consulting business and conference business specializing in airline loyalty and ancillary revenue. So I do know a lot of the folks that are at the conference, and it's always a good reunion to see a lot of familiar faces, especially in the space and talking about loyalty. At Marigold, we is a relatively new name for a company that's been around for over 20 years in many parts. The loyalty part of Marigold, many of you might know us as Cheetah Digital and Cheetah Loyalty, which is now part of the Marigold family. And many times when I'm in an Uber driving somewhere and on the road, and an Uber driver might pick up some small talk and ask, "What do you do?" Oftentimes we jest that we're gardeners. And in fact, a lot of folks, the Marigold brand might be new to them. And really, it is the culmination of our loyalty capabilities and very strong email marketing capabilities and personalization, zero-party data. So it's quite a bit of really cool tools that are all under the Marigold umbrella, doing really what we have kind of reinvented the way of relationship marketing, which is really not just being a loyalty engine or messaging powerhouse, because we do power a lot of large brands that you touch every day. But really allowing these brands to have a contextual conversation and dialogue with customers at scale. And that's challenging. And we really, we wake up every day and try to solve those challenges. And back to the gardener analogy, it's really not that far off, David, because a marigold, if some of you that may plant your gardens at home, is a helper plant. It actually helps the other plants in the garden to grow and keeps the bugs away. So we like to approach the market and what we do from that perspective. Really, we're here to help. We lead with strategy, and that's really why we're here at Loyalty Summit, is to really discuss and explore a lot of the trends and travel loyalty today, and we thoroughly enjoy that.
I wanted to pick your brains on some, so get your insights, your top of mind thoughts on some of the things going on, in the industry. Given your length of experience, and again on multiple sides of the table there. So the theme for this year's Loyalty Summit event, it's a bit of buzzword bingo. It's we've called it the AI revolution. Harnessing AI to drive the future of customer loyalty. And buzzword bingo aside, the reality is we're always talking about new tech. We're always talking about new tech. And solving legacy tech challenges. This is not a new conversation in the loyalty industry. It's been going on as long as loyalty programs. Certainly modern frequent flyer programs have existed. And AI is definitely having its moment right now. And perhaps finally, after a number of years of tech-related buzzword bingo, we actually do have a tech now that actually is, having more of a practical moment. For all the nonsense about blockchain, or even before that, big data and stuff like that, a lot of false starts, a lot of false promises, a lot of non-practical implementation for a day-to-day loyalty program manager. AI is a little bit different, because it's not just about concepts and use cases. it is actually about, there are practical implementations that can, at the least, make the operational delivery of loyalty programs on a day-to-day basis perhaps more streamlined, or perhaps be able to do more with less, which is the story of every department's budget. That's not a loyalty problem alone. Every department and organization has that same issue, right? So, as much as loyalty managers like to complain about budget cuts, everybody faces the same issue. The usually accept audit. That's a good department to work in if you don't like budget cuts. Usually. That said, buzzword bingo aside, whether we're talking about AI, whether we're talking about personalization, whether, we're talking about, I just mentioned big data, but, still leveraging the data we had. If we think about regulatory challenges when it comes to privacy around the world, those challenges are going to continue to grow. We've been talking about things like, personalized marketing and personalized offers and promotions and things like that in the loyalty space for so many years. Are we suddenly at a crossroads where we can, instead of it being sort of 3 steps forward and 2.5 steps back, that we're actually going to make some big strides here?
I think we are in some ways when it comes to AI. In fact, AI, we've been doing that for many, many years, as opposed to, say, blockchain technology or distributed ledger approaches, which was kind of a bit more fleeting, right? So it's more like the technology searching for a problem. AI and really the subset of that, machine learning, has been part of our software for a very long time at Marigold. And in fact, we made a conscious decision where our product team even discovered that we're going to have to highlight that in some of our naming conventions. So you're going to see a little bit more of that. But in fact, it's been sitting there and working really, really hard in the background for a long time. One of the big things that we're seeing now, where we're really approaching this critical mass of advancement, whether it's NVIDIA being as advanced as it is, the technology is there to support it, where AI is just a lot more effective. But the core tenets still hold true, where anything that your marketing team might find mundane and tedious is probably a pretty good task for AI. But it's still, or even machine learning, right? So of course you have on one side, there's generative AI that's making a lot of headlines, which we have in our technology as well. So if you need some marketing copy recommendations or subject line recommendations, generative AI is going to do something like that for you. A lot of folks might see it in their everyday lives with, a 12-fingered image of someone, right? And then, of course, you have the machine learning side of things, which we use quite a bit, which is really, advantageous for marketers working in big data and needing to spot trends in there, being a companion to human data scientists. So we still really believe strongly that there is a corporation into the foreseeable future with humans, whether it's human data scientists and or strategists, and machine learning and AI in order to kind of do those mundane tasks. But we're still, to David, to go back to your point, we're still missing the mark. And really, I'm here to evangelize some of that, where going back to when I was a loyalty manager in the late 90s, a lot of those methodologies, whether it was life cycle marketing, just looking at migration analysis, year over year, just seeing the movement of your frequent flyers or frequent guests and seeing, hey, are they increasing in their spend with the brand, or are they decreasing or staying the same? That type of analysis can be done in a very straightforward manner on Excel spreadsheet or in other ways. And we've been doing that for years. And I think we've kind of gotten away from some of the core analytics that really have been around since the 70s or even, before that. And so AI and ML is not a panacea, but it really fits in to places where it's really needed. And that's going to be large, complex, tedious data sets.
I think, again, sort of to think of not so much the buzzwords, but, we've been talking again in this industry for a long time about, I hate to use the word personalization, but really the one-to-one communication with our members. Whether from the simple thing of segmentation, it could be as simple as segmenting our members based on tiers or recency of purchase behavior. If we're talking about hotels and airlines, when did you last stay, or when did you last fly with us, or maybe by geographical market. Are you a domestic traveler? Are you an international traveler? Are you an economy traveler? Are you a first class traveler? These are very, or we've always tried, to somehow try to segment business passengers and guests versus, leisure travelers and guests. And, traditionally that was easy when they booked through a business related channel, perhaps. But then it was also sometimes hard to identify them on the weekend when they were traveling with their family, so we've always sort of had some of these challenges and some of these perhaps traditional approaches to sort of segmentation, and then that leads to, well, which offer do we give to which group, and and then we can measure that on the back end and all the rest of it. But it seems to be that this one-to-one, or this goal of one-to-one, personalization is just always missing the mark, like always. I mean, I'm sure, like you, like me, like everybody listening, we open up our inboxes in the morning and there's 300 emails in there, from various programs and organizations and brands and whoever else. And if we're lucky, most of them get our name right in the first line of the email. Most of them, hopefully they haven't got the placeholder of dear member or dear customer, or, God forbid, the wrong name. So most of them get that right, but that's not really personalization, I mean, on my LinkedIn feed, and you see it as well, there's plenty of examples of people just like, hey, I got an email from this program or whatever, and they're telling me they're trying to upsell me this, but, I actually already get that for free as a benefit of my status. They should know that, Starbucks, Starbucks, when they really double down or triple down, on their digital flywheel, to try to get people to buy not just coffee, but perhaps a bakery item or a breakfast sandwich or something like that, would constantly be trying to offer you something new. But what if you're a vegetarian and they keep offering you, a breakfast sandwich with meat in it? Then they sort of started figuring out, I've offered Roger this, this turkey breakfast sandwich 18 times. He doesn't even activate the offer. Maybe he's not interested. So eventually they started to get a little smarter with that. And I think if you, for those of you in the US with Starbucks, you're probably seeing more, more offers that are more like, hey, I know you like to have this, I don't know, whatever it is you particularly have on a regular basis. Here, get it 3 times this week and we'll give you a bonus. So I think there are improvements there, but there's plenty of bad examples out there. And you made a comment a moment ago sort of suggesting that we're still not there yet. We're still not missing the mark. What is it that you think that we're missing? Is it technological? Is it strategic? Is it budgetary? Is it lack of good analytics?
It's really the impetus among the marketers and leadership. It's the desire to go away and kind of minimize some of um, the bulk offers and bulk campaigns, which, quite frankly, it's the more you put volume out there, is the more you're going to get a relative return. So
Mhm.
sometimes that's straightforward and that's simple. And a typical marketer is fighting a number of fires, have a number of headwinds, smaller teams, constrained budgets, so everything is contracted. So it's generally the path of least resistance. And I totally understand that, being a marketer myself and working with so many marketers today. However, even though that might be limited in its scope, it's still very, very effective because we're playing the numbers. But imagine if we went beyond just playing the numbers and doing kind of this mass thing, like, okay, everybody gets a discount offer, and we started to be more prescriptive. Then you start getting into a zone where things are a lot more optimized. You
Mhm.
can have a really sane conversation with your CFO and show them that, wow, loyalty is actually moving the needle. And these are some of the things that we're working with our partners to do, because we're not perfect. And in fact, in a lot of our partnerships, we recognize some of these shortcomings, and it's common. It's across the board. There are a few brands that are probably on top of the echelon here that are doing a lot of these things, but they themselves have a long way to go. right? So these theoretical constructs of that segment of one and that one-to-one marketing, we can absolutely support that with technology, and we've been able to support that for a very long time. But it really comes down to expediency and the decisions that are being made in the C-suite and all the way down.
You mentioned the CFO there, and sort of I alluded to budget constraints earlier as well. One of the things that I always get a question of, with all the programs that I work with, and I'm sure you get the same thing. Is finance or the CFO or the CEO, is always wanting to ask the question of, did loyalty move the needle? Is loyalty moving the needle? You're asking for more money. Yes, if you've got a co-brand card, if you're an airline or hotel, for example, certainly I see the revenue coming in from there. But are you actually delivering heads in beds and bums on seats? That's a common question. And certainly some programs I work with, or I've worked with in the past, you go in there and they ask you the question and you take a look and you're like, well, let's start with the basics. Are you measuring it? If you're not measuring it, you can't report on it, right? So sometimes before you even get into how you're, answering that question about, is loyalty moving the needle, or can loyalty move the needle, some of the basics, the table stakes aren't even being done. But in the bigger programs, they are. But the question still exists. Are we in a position nowadays to be able to answer that question? Are programs able to answer that question that comes from the CFO or CEO, do you think?
So, David, that's a question that it has a lot of meaning for me, because I've sat across from those CFOs, whether when I was working as a loyalty manager and on the other side as a technology provider. And one day I was just, there really has to be a way to do this, and I'm happy to say that I've cracked the code. And it's been a number of years, and since I've been at Marigold for almost 4 years now, they've given me the freedom and the resources in order to add to this framework. And it's more than just an ROI framework, but it really starts with attribution. And our platform is well aligned to informing and making sure that this is a successful path to attribution. So there are a number of things that go into that, but really it's a series of simple steps, as long as the technology is there to support that. So absolutely, we have cracked that code, and I'll be happy to talk about that more with you at the Loyalty Summit.
Terrific. I'm going to make sure I know we have some time chatting at the Loyalty Summit next week in Chicago, so I'm definitely going to talk to you about that. Because the best way to prove attribution of the loyalty program, obviously, is switch it off for a while, right? Switch it off and see what the difference in business is. Obviously, brands aren't going to do that, which is why you get the question from the CEO and the CFO. So I definitely look forward to going, into more detail on that topic with you, because I think it's a popular topic. I know you hear that question all the time. I hear that question all the time. It's a question that comes up, in the industry discussions all the time. Everybody wants the answer to that question. So I'll definitely want to explore that a bit more with you. Other trends happening in the industry right now, so while I've got, I'm picking your brains on things, we talked about AI, obviously different flavors of AI, which I think was an interesting call out that you made as well, because you're right, it's generative AI that is, having its moment in the sun right now, but it's not necessarily AI as a whole is not a new technology, perhaps some new applications of it. And the technology has progressed, but some other industry trends and things that are sort of happening in, across the board right now, obviously across the globe, we're still sort of, I don't want to maybe be a doomsayer and say economic uncertainty, but we know it's a little bit of it's not even a roller coaster. It's sort of, it almost feels like in organizations, the economic outlook is a bit like being half pregnant. It's a case of, look, we want to wait and see. We're not sure yet. We're not approving bigger budgets. We're not approving major projects. We're not approving headcount expansions. There's a lot of projects in organizations and brands on hold, especially loyalty, on hold. Do you think it's just economic and budgetary constraints holding things back right now? Or, what do you think that it is that we're seeing so many loyalty initiatives kind of on hold? Or is that totally a wrong premise to start with?
No, I think you're spot on. Certainly, we've seen that trend. I think here in the circle that we're in, and or colleagues as well that are in the business of loyalty technology. We all see each other in the same places, and in fact, that that acquisition cycle to secure some loyalty solution is tends to be more protracted than say some of our other solutions like email, and even zero party data. And there's I think there's a number of reasons for that. The first reason has a little bit to do with what we're talking about before, with that drive and that justification where is a loyalty program actually driving the returns. And I think in a typical brand, in this case in a typical travel company, whether it's a hotel or an airline, you'll have kind of two teams, right? Team loyalty and team traditional marketing and good old revenue management, right? So and with that, there's going to be a team where it says, hey, we're actually driving things where maybe we're generating a large amount of ancillary revenue from simply kind of lifting the currency and merchandising that currency. And certainly there's a lot of areas that you can prove that out. But did you actually motivate someone in Atlanta to fly Delta Airlines because they're going to earn their sky miles, or is it because it's convenient for them? So in some cases, that question is fairly obvious. So with that and the complexity that comes along with loyalty and loyalty systems, there are a number of things that need to be connected to it, with just CDP and other things. There's data and privacy considerations. So it adds to that, and that's going to add to those delays in the budget that you're talking about, because there's this constant kind of cycle of justifying what we need for that, and then things kind of take a rest, and then you have to refresh that all over again. So you get in this vicious cycle, right? So I don't think the need or the desire to have loyalty programs has diminished. In fact, it's increasing, because loyalty programs have shown that they're massive sources of ancillary revenue, just to speak to any of the majors in the room today. But also we know that it's also a great toolkit for some of the privacy headwinds that we have, and being able to have that relationship marketing conversation with customers, because of course loyalty programs are the original source of zero party data, where folks are actually saying, go ahead and ask me anything, I'll pretty much tell you anything or do most things in exchange for the loyalty value proposition. So that desire is definitely increasing, but the complexities that come along with that are getting a lot more severe, and that's kind of adding to the protraction of those cycles.
Follow-on question. Maybe this is a bit more of a how long's a piece of string question, but a loyalty program's too big. And I don't mean from a co-brand revenue perspective if you're a major airline or hotel. I mean, if we think back 10, 15 years, it was, we had less, if you think about the number of people on any given flight or the number of people in any given hotel on a night, right? The percentage of people that were members of the program, was particularly elite members of the program, with tier status, much, much lower than today. Which also means it was easier to perhaps, give them, give your best customers an upgrade, because there was less status members perhaps competing for that benefit, or, lounges weren't as crowded, or, you could give them bonus points because it wasn't as costly, things like that. So yes, everyone's well aware now, on the revenue side, the scale and size of these programs, we have billions and billions literally in co-brand revenue coming in. But on the other side, on the core program, the member behavior side, we have so many members, or so many guests and customers and passengers now that are members of the program, that have tier status with the program. Are we too big now? That it's a challenge on delivering those benefits, delivering meaningful benefits, having a meaningful value proposition. Top line sort of thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's a valid point, and you see that every day, right? If you're lined up at the gate to board, you might think you're relatively high status. You may not be the secret tier, but you're the highest tier, and you're probably the fourth group to get on board, right? So, are you going to lounge, and certainly the lounges are crowded. So as population grows, and there's a need to create more soft benefits through the pressures of maintaining some of these sources of ancillary revenue, like the co-brand cash cows, right? We start to put some downward pressure on some of these soft benefits, and they get a little bit diluted. And of course, there's more people as the market and populations grow. So the short answer is yes. There's probably a shortage of kind of meaningful benefits versus the amount of people that might be seeking them or are being given access to them. And there's actually another aspect, David, that you may not have thought of in this. And if you look at Facebook and other social media platforms, but really let's say Facebook, because they're a massive database, and this is something that the audience can relate to. How many times have you seen a birthday come up in your Facebook feed for someone that has passed? Right. As we get older, it happens more and more. And certainly it happens to me. And it's a nice memorial. But then if you really think about it, just in our personal lives, and the people listening right now may know at least one person, right, that is no longer with us, that their Facebook profile is active. Right. And you extrapolate that by quite a bit. And it's come up before, like how much of Facebook's database is alive.
Yep.
And the same question can be posed for our large loyalty program databases, because they're massive, right? And a lot of time has passed since 1981, when the original programs were launched. So in fact, we have these issues, and that goes back to that migration that I talked about of members, and why it's so important. Not just looking at migration if you're in a growth trajectory or a decline trajectory in the recent period, but really sometimes migration can take place over 5 years, or and especially now post COVID, there's a lot of folks that exited the market that are slowly coming back into the market. So now we're looking at these migration patterns that are like 5 years apart. And then the challenge of actually knowing that, well, has this person retired, or is this person still on the earth with us, is difficult. So that profile management, as time goes by and programs get older and mature, is now becoming a real issue, where we want to look at things like, how do we manage that churn, that purposeful churn? Are we still getting value from these people, or do these people still exist? How are we going to deal with that at scale? It can mean don't just hit a button, right? So sometimes you can lose the associated data with that. So you want to make sure that you aggregate your data separately, that was connected to people, so you can still look at trends, because that's valuable from an economic perspective. And then also, what's your net replacement? What's that quality net replacement? So a lot of programs are going out there and they're doing acquisition, whether it's a flight attendant on board, really putting a great effort into waking you up and coming down with that little placard, right, to sign up for the program or the credit card. But then are we really enrolling folks that are going to move things forward? And then once they're enrolled, are we putting them into an onboarding journey that's meaningful and impactful, and at the same time has an underlying layer of evaluating that person if they're going to be a good candidate for that loyalty program? So these are some of the more decisive things. And you notice that I'm not really talking about technology so much here. Besides, the technology can do those things like, delete profiles at scale and that sort of thing. That stuff is there. But these are decisions that need to be made, and the effort needs to be put in.
Yeah, that's right. The technology can't make the business decisions for you, and the managerial, decisions where a lot of time discretion is required. And you have to make a judgment call, about, where you're going to draw a line on things, and things like that. So you're absolutely right. The technology allows us and enables us to do it, but it doesn't replace, program leadership making decisions on things. There's a lot more we could talk about, Roger. I know we're going to be in person next week, so I'm going to maybe save the rest of my questions until then. Obviously, for those folks listening interested, Roger and I are going to be talking more about this next week. So hopefully you'll join our session. And Roger, you'll be around. So if people want to sort of catch up with you during the breaks and stuff, perhaps learn a bit more about some of the questions we've been talking about, a bit more about Marigold, the solutions you provide as well. That'll be an opportunity as well. Roger, thanks for joining. Thanks for indulging me in my questions. Thanks to Marigold as our presenting sponsor for next week's Loyalty Summit in Chicago on the 17th and 18th of September. Please, if you're coming along, make sure you say hi. If you're not coming along, you should. And we hope to see you there.
Thank you, David, for having us. We're looking forward to it.
Thanks, Roger. Bye now.